ua manalo e no mako ua koko mai nei ke kaiaka ke ia hala wai na kau wai wai ke ke na kuliana wai ua koko mai pu na kaya ulu ka poe na hoa aino ke ia aina loha kako ke ko ke no noi ha ani mako ia oi e vehe mai na pepe au ha mama mai na uai e olo he pono i ka manao ka ike ka nao au ka poe ka lehu ka poe alohe o ke ia aina e ala ka ima ia mako i ka hoolala ana ka ho'onohono ana i kama pohana ma ke ana nei nauno ke akua e ala ka ima i koko mai malama mai ia mako ke akua ke nonoi haha ani mako ia oe e ala ka ima i ke ala pono no kapoa pau no kapono ka lahu no kapono ke ia aina no kapono o ka hano na li'i kala pohana i hana i mamua mako no ke ala pono kapo no kapono ka lahu i ka aina ka mako mau keiki na hanauna e hiki mai ana no ke aloha i loko ka puhuai no ka aloha i ka lahu i ka aloha i ka mo i wahine li i o kalani nauno ke akua e hawi mai ka ala pono ka ike ka na o ma koi no ke ia leo kule ama ono.
Hello, members of the Board of Trustees in the Office of Foreign Affairs. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before we proceed, we're going to make some small amendments. We're going to take Roman numeral 3 and move it up to where community concerns is. And where new business, where we have a community concerns is. I will ask that the board consider taking 11:30 a.m. a short deviation to consolidate our attorneys in executive session. And after we convene back in public session, I ask that we take a recess for lunch and reconvene at 1 o'clock with the testimony before that. So with that said, the chair would like to move forward and ask that administration provide please, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to do a roll call. Okay, roll call, please. Not roll call, attendance.
Here.
Here. Present.
Trustee Mudu
Here.
Trustee Robert Lindsay.
Here.
Trustee Stender.
Here.
Trustee Whitehead. Chairperson Machado.
Yes, President. Trustee Apo will be joining us at about 12:30 p.m. and Trustee Whitehead will be joining us momentarily. So with that said, we have 2 absents and we have 7 persons. We'll now proceed to the administration of the report of recommendations and nation building initiative.
Velina mai ke aloha kuia ka koa pau no ke kakaia ka nei ia o ko ke kaupoko o ke ia hale o ahua alua o ka ke na kuliana Hawaii o e hoi ia o e ka kauhuhu o la ho e noho maluna o ke ia kaupoku o ia ke kai ke aloha no i ka lehu i ka poe o ke ia kai ulu o ka pai moku o ko hele ana mai ke ia ka kaiaka e pile ana i ke ala i mua no ka kukulu ana i ka la hui aloha no. Good morning, trustees, Chair Machado, especially to beneficiaries who come from near and far today to share your manao and regarding our nation building process. Administration would like to do a report on our recommendations on nation building. Much has transpired in the past 2 months since OHA had committed to this process since March 6th. We have conducted a number of community meetings. We've heard from quite a few beneficiaries. We wanted to report on the proceedings of those meetings. So what we'd like to do is really provide an update to the board since March 6th to clarify again what was the board policy and position that occurred That will be conducted by Chief Advocate Kavika Riley. Then we wanted to present, and we have presented you a report from community engagement that we put out last week on some statistics and some main themes from community feedback. And then lastly, our recommendations from administration to move forward our process. So at this time, I'd like to call upon Chief Advocate Kavika Riley, who will give a background again for the board on what our position is, our statement of commitment moving for this area, and what the framework really is, and then followed by Dr. Kehawa Ban, our Community Engagement Director. Kavika?
Mahalo pohana. Aloha mai kākou board. In just a moment, we're going to put the presentation up on the screens for everyone to see. So as Pohana mentioned, the structure for administration's presentation today, I'll be providing an update and refresher on the original proposal and the initial response during the re-enrollment period. That will be followed by Dr. Kehawa Abad's presentation regarding community outreach and feedback. And then Kapohana will provide administration's recommendations. The proposed nation-building framework that we are discussing today would not have been possible without the leadership of all of you, the trustees. As you know, the planning committee that proposed the nation-building framework was established through a unanimous vote of the board on December 19th of last year. The planning committee was charged with developing a statement of commitment, a proposed framework, and budget to continue governance efforts after the Native Hawaiian Role Commission dissolves. The ad hoc committee, and we have here on the screen the 5 charges that the board gave the ad hoc governance planning committee. The ad hoc committee met immediately and often and began to develop a plan and guidance for the trustees very quickly. The trustees considered legal aspects of this framework on January 19th, January 30th, February 20th, and on March 6th, the board fully deliberated and considered the draft statement of commitment, the nation-building framework, and its accompanying budget. At the end of its consideration, the board voted 8-0 to approve the nation-building framework, both the statement of commitment and the budget. As you know, the framework proposed on March 6th was that OHA accept and request the official roll produced by the Native Hawaiian Role Commission once the commission completed its work and dissolved. OHA's proposal was that the roll be used as the basis for determining eligibility for a broad-based nation-building process, which would include an election, a convening for the purpose of drafting a governing document, and a referendum on that proposed governing document. The framework also proposed that OHA develop means to collaborate and facilitate the nation-building process with other Hawaiian organizations, especially ali'i trusts, royal orders, and benevolent societies that demonstrate an unbroken link between the present time and our kingdom time. Administration also attached a proposed timetable for the process. Additionally, administration committed to requesting that the Role Commission reopen its enrollment and promised a strong community engagement campaign to take place during the enrollment window. The trustees' vote was praised by a diverse array of Hawaiian leaders, from independence advocates like Wampi Kanahele to federal recognition champions such as former Senator Daniel Akaka. Of course, it was not without critics, but it was a unifying moment. The very next day, the Role Commission responded with a vote to reopen its enrollment for a 6-week window that started on March 17th and ended on May 1st. During that 6-week window, OHA held over 20 town halls on every island except for Ni'ihau, as well as virtual town halls for those of the other continent. Additionally, there were many small group meetings, door-to-door canvassing, sign-ups in public venues such as malls, and social media campaigns. Also phone banking and canvassing of a variety of other sorts. The result, among others, was that Hawaiians responded in a simple but unmistakable way. Many of them signed up for the first time for the official role. OHA administration's conservative estimate tells us that at least 6,000 new names were added. Our advertiser estimates that it could be as many as 10,000 new names. If that estimate is correct, the official role could have well over 130,000 Hawaiians signed up. This is not to say that it was unanimously or completely supported, but it's a demonstration of support from a large number of our community. We believe that, in a sense, it speaks to the community's response to the trustees' approved nation-building proposal, and also it indicates the good work of OHA staff, of volunteers, community partners, and many others who accomplished this through a mix of a variety of techniques. But ultimately, this isn't about OHA or any party taking credit. These were individual decisions made by thousands of Hawaiians who decided during this short 6-week window that after considering the nation-building proposal, they wanted to be part of the process. As we mentioned, and as we all know, of course, this does not mean that this was supported unanimously by our community. To better elaborate on the variety of feedback that OHA received through its engagement, I'd like to turn the floor over to our Community Engagement Director, Dr. Kehawa Bad.
Aloha, Chair and Shadow Trustees. Aloha nui for the opportunity to address you. Aloha, no kako. Aloha. I'd like to begin with a brief overview of the sources of our community feedback. We know we've listened well at our DOT meetings in the last months. We've had 2 Kamauea sessions, one in March, one in April. Both of those were 2-day sessions in which more than 100 attendees were participating in them. We've had, as Kalika mentioned, 20 town halls that we sponsored across the Pai'aina and another 11 meetings that community invited us to offer presentations at. During these meetings, we heard a lot from our community, and they were very consistent. That consistency continued through our canvassing efforts in monitoring Facebook, Twitter, online blogs, and websites. Virtual media chimed in a similar fashion. Phone banking, we heard a lot of the same comments. And of course in individual conversations as well. As Kalika summarized, the sign-ups emphasized that there's a large sector of our community that is enthusiastic about what we're doing and are ready to go. And universally, there's a sense that we need to build our nation. That's not in question. There's a readiness to start and finish a process, a readiness to have our nation restored, but there is disagreement about the process and the outcome.
Just real quick, Kim. Trustees, the administration has prepared a summary analysis of the community feedback. It should be in your folder. It's much detailed, so Kehawa and we're sharing a much more abbreviated version of the content.
A very consistent comment was that more time is needed for more education, much more in-depth education, and I'll speak to that in more detail later. For additional registration, we felt that there's a need for another registration process, and again, I'll speak to that in more detail later. People, regardless of whether they agree with our plan process or not, they feel that there needs to be more time just to allow that process to run smoothly. It's too truncated right now, and would not allow for an efficient process that involves everyone appropriately. We also recognize that this is not just something that affects our locally, but the larger community that we live within. And so gaining the support of that larger community requires time. All of this combined made very clear that this is a huge need and consistent request of our community for more time. And again, one of the primary reasons for the time is to afford an opportunity for more education. Why? Because we need to build a well-informed body of lobby voters and delegates. What do we want to hear more about? Our community is saying that we want to understand more about the proposed process. What is this OHA? What are the Kuleana delegates? What is the intended outcome of the OHA? How will people interface with the OHA? All of these kinds of questions are being asked. What is this referendum going to be like? And of course, we know that some of those questions cannot be answered just yet, but they need to be answered in order for people to participate meaningfully. And so again, the time and education become critical. People want to know more about our history and its implications, and those who know these well feel there's a need to share this clearly, effectively with our lobbyists so that, again, people can make well-informed decisions throughout the process. A lot of comments came up about international law and the law of nations and their implications. And of course, we've heard quite a lot about that as of late. The pros and cons of state recognition, federal recognition, independence, what are those? We need to explore these. And the depth at which we need to explore this is far more than is the current timeline and the current plans are affording us. How can we accomplish much of these goals? Well, let's involve more of our community experts, and not just developing, but in implementing these educational opportunities. A key comment that repeatedly was stated was the need for a second registration process. And this is to address those who oppose signing up on the Kaneola goal. The argumentation begins with the recognition that the Kaneola goal stemmed from Act 195. Act 195 is viewed as focusing on achieving state recognition. And for those who would attest that the state is not legally, in some ways, formed, then their actions would be questioned. And the idea of being part of a state recognition process would also be questioned. And signing up on a role that is linked to a state recognition process is therefore, for many people, something they will not be willing to do. Now, how do we ensure that all those who are interested in exploring all options for our nation can be included in the conversation? Well, the solution that's been suggested is that we consider a second goal. That is separate from Kaneola, but that utilizes much of the same standards so that there's consistency. One of the reasons that people feel it's important to consider a second goal is that by opening up a second goal, it demonstrates that this OHA facilitated process is independent of Act 195, is independent of a process that is otherwise potentially seen as being driven in one direction. Opening up the second door to registration demonstrates that there is independence between our effort at nation rebuilding and what the state envisioned to have achieved in state recognition. OHA's facilitator role is in the nation building process is generally supported. People see that this is something that's well aligned with our mission and vision, and that we are uniquely able to play this facilitation role, especially through our resources. Our resources allow for our independent Hawaiian election process to be to have the integrity of not having other outside influences. It's a purely Hawaiian process run with Hawaiian funds, and that's something that people felt very strongly about. At the same time, there is a lot of skepticism, and I think these are in many ways born of not just things that have occurred recently, but even, long ago types of activities and decisions that have transpired. Questions arise such as, will OHA try to mold the process in a manner that determines its outcome? The short timeline is seen as angling things in a certain direction. The single role that excludes many people who feel strongly about independence perspectives is seen as angling things in a given direction. Will OHA try to affect outcomes? This is a question that comes up repeatedly. How would OHA react if the outcome is something that maybe is not viewed as by the board or leadership as the most optimal outcome? Would funding be pulled? Will OHA try to trump the outcome in some sort of way? These are the kinds of questions that get asked. OHA's commitment to neutrality is something that is seen as absolutely necessary, but for the same reasons viewed with much skepticism, as I mentioned earlier, so the same questions arise. In short, there's a view that for those who are interested in independence models, that the odds are tipped in their disfavor. The short time frame, significant education efforts that over the decades have been focused largely on state and federal recognition, a single committee overall goal, OHA's support of key components of state and federal recognition. And if anyone is interested in having a better clarity of what I'm talking about in terms of key components of state and federal recognition, we recently posted on our website, OHA.org, a number of graphics that help to illustrate what I'm referring to there. The Royal Commission supported similarly as those key components of federal and state recognition, and of course, Act 195 itself and the Department of Interior's recent efforts. So all of these things are weighing on the side of state and federal recognition. People felt encouraged by some of what happened with Kamo'aina, and of course, as I'm trying to illustrate the larger rectangle there, felt very encouraged by Ohana's letter to John Kerry, which shifted the discussion to some significant degree. There's a strong voice saying that we really ought to be looking at the situation tipped in the other direction, because there are many reasons that are being cited for why an independence perspective is valid. When you consider international law, the Hawaiian Kingdom's role in the family of nations, the illegal overthrow of protests, the petitions, what we know to be an illegal annexation, and the apology resolution. There are very strong voices saying we need to consider these and the weight of these. So in considering recommendations, there's some crucial questions we need to ask ourselves. How do we find balance to keep our lawfully moving forward together to rebuild our nation? How do we honor our commitment to being neutral? And how do we fulfill our goal of listening to our lawfully while accounting for the many constraints we face? We know that there are many, many facets to decision-making that needs to be before you as trustees, and we know that this is not an easy place for you folks to be. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share much of what was voiced to us as we've been moving out to the community.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Alvarado.
I have a lot of questions for you, KR.
Trustee Alvarado, we'll have to come out KPs and then we'll open up for questions, because I believe he wants to make some comments.
You want to make some comments?
Yeah. Well, I have the last piece, which is to provide the recommendations.
Right.
Right.
You can go.
So as you just heard from Kehao, putting into context based on the feedback from our community, as well as the stakeholders who had participated in our Kamawaiea summits, and also a number of feedback from those who have been expressing their views on our Facebook, as well as in person. What I want to share is that we have moved within the past 4 or 5 years since 2010 into advocacy at the top, and one of our priorities is air governance, and part of that specific result is related to our vision to ho'olulahui, to strive for a beloved nation, and the result is to transfer our assets. Okay. Much has occurred over these past years, and now we are recommitting ourselves, and to have taken this bold step back in November, December to form the ad hoc committee and spend months of time planning and getting to this point. I do think it's a very good time to reassess what we have done and to hear from the community and to balance out the needs and how we respond to our people. So, as shared, I wanted to talk a little bit more about more time, more education, and an alternative registration process separate from Kana'ai'olawalo. And what we really try to look at is to provide parity and fairness. I think is very, very important. I think it should be stated here, for those who don't know, is that the board in 2002, I believe, did adopt a policy to move forward with federal recognition. So that's an official position, okay? Part of probably our dilemma is that as OHA has supported this nation building process, and the idea of neutrality makes it complicated because on one hand we've been very supportive, and one of the reasons for the back then in 2002 for the adoption of federal recognition was to prevent further attacks, further barrage of legal challenges or legal suits to not just to OHA but to other Native Hawaiian institutions, as well as to preserve and protect a number of the federal programs that support Native Hawaiian services in education, health, social services, and many others. So we are at this fork in the road where we have to reassess, and given all that has transpired within these 2 months with regard to our commitment, and now the Kana'ai'olawalo sunsets in the ending of June, and weighing where we go from here is very important. What I really just want to emphasize is that administration is presenting you the feedback from the community meetings and many others. I think it is important to note that a number of trustees did attend those meetings, as well as myself personally, to come out and speak. I think Trustee Hulu Lindsay attended quite a few. Trustee Ahuna. I know Chair Machado had attended a number. I'm not too sure who else. But it was a real reflection of where our community is at. And so we're just sharing the highlights. We are recommending administration a 6 to 9 month extension of the timeline for a number of reasons. Since we've been quite busy in the months of March and April, we are still catching up in terms of putting out and planning for educational materials. We still need to educate the broader community on how such elections for delegates will be conducted and how the apportionment will be. We are still looking to a third party because it's consistent with our framework of being neutral. We would support, and that's in the decision making to select a contractor through our process. We are eliciting participation from Ali'i Trust and the Royal Societies as well as the Hawaiian Civic Clubs. We must move forward at a very prudent and reasonable pace. Right now, with the current time frame, it does put a lot of pressure on staff, as well as pressure on the community, because we haven't adequately informed them of the process, and there's more questions that people want answered. And lastly, the selection of a third-party firm. We want to make sure if we go through this process, we want to do it right. Okay, and we've done tremendous work up to this point in evaluating the merits and benefits of a third party, but we feel that administration could benefit for more time to truly align ourselves from the beginning of an elections process to move forward. We're also recommending more education in nation rebuilding efforts, consistent with our plans to build an education engagement campaign involving community experts. We have conducted 4 Kamauaea summits. We are still committed to planning a 5th one with a symposium of additional experts. However, I think administration feels that there have been many on the front line over the past 10 to 20 years who have been in this process, and we should be more open to their experience and expertise in these areas to guide and inform us as we move forward. So not only time is essential, but the education to better inform ourselves as the leaders and decision makers of OHA, and how we factor that in terms of refining and improving our nation building process. Education provides opportunities for Lahui to be better educated and make better informed voting decisions in the nation rebuilding process. And we already have planned for that. We have a number of projects that we are currently working on towards that area with regard to history, facts, educating OPO families, and looking at very multi-level of education processes. And I think that to give time to the broader community is very important for them to digest, as well as have sufficient discussion about the merits of education and the different models that are proposed for self-governance. We also recommend the consideration of 3 possible options to address alternative role. And I will say here is we provide 3 options is because we continue to seek legal counsel on the possibility of a second alternative role for your consideration. First is adjust plans. We could use OHA's Hawaiian Registry program. It's currently in-house. We have staff that are on board that can do it. It's already in place. Second would be adjust plans, develop a newer voter registration initiative mirroring the process of Hawaiian Registry program. Again, that would be of low cost and easy startup, but it would be certainly separate from OHA. And then lastly, maintain plans, continue with the existing policy to use the official role as the basis for participation in the Hawaiian election. That's consistent with the existing policy and consistent with original commitments with the Native Hawaiian Role Commission. So these are 3 options. So timeline, we're recommending 6 to 9 months, certainly education, and then lastly is these 3 options for an alternative role. At this time, trustees, that concludes administration's presentation based on our summary analysis of the community engagement meetings as well as our advocacy recommendations with regard to our current position of nation building, and then moving forward for your consideration, and we'll open up for feedback or questions and discussion.
The chair calls on trustee Rowan for questions.
Yeah. I have a question for the administration and most particularly Kehau. Yes. In all of the meetings that you had, did any of these groups suggest to you a different process? What is that process? Have you come with recommendations of a real process from any group? Or are you just telling us, we should just wait 6, 9 months and then we develop the process? Do any of these groups have their own process and their ideas about how to build a nation? That's what we need. We don't need a lot of talk. We need something concrete. I have submitted to the board papers that I got from Billy Lundy Tracks, and I've distributed them, and she wants it put on the record. Now, in Billy Lundy's comments, she does suggest a process. Now, this is the kind of thing that is productive. I've been here a long time, and I've heard a lot of people talk, a lot of them in this room now. But unless you have a process that you want to share with us that we can discuss, we're just talking and spinning our wheels. Because no matter what OHA does, they may not like it. And we have to keep going back to the drawing board. And there are some people who, no matter what we do, they're not going to accept it, period. They want nationhood, kingdom. And there was an article in the newspaper that somebody emailed to me that said, how come Kamana'o was recognizing this one kingdom when there's 5 others that you didn't recognize? So, I mean, after a while it gets kind of ridiculous. And then the people in the community say, look at these Hawaiians, they can't even figure out what they're going to do. So, one of my complaints is this, and it has to do with our own office. First of all, we didn't realize all of this was happening because you folks did not share with us. You should have kept us up to date all along. And a lot of money spent on commercials and so on that said nothing. Now, to me, there are 2 tracks that people don't understand. One, on this federal recognition, it's a process of just being on the record where the United States says, yes, the U.S. had a political relationship with Hawaii. and we had a treaty. That's all we're seeking. It's different from building a nation. We're not building a nation by asking the US to write us a letter and tell us, yes, we had a political relationship with you. And that's what we're after. We're not building a nation. There are two separate things. And this is where your office, I think, fell down. Because if people could understand what it is we're doing, there wouldn't be so much objection to this. And so I'm really annoyed because we spent an awful lot of money campaigning and using commercial time. And now the suggestion to go 9 months more with more commercial time, more money, this is all trust monies. We can't afford to just, excuse the expression, piss it away. And so, you know, in your recommendations, I think that because the trustees have not been involved in exactly what you guys have been going through and what the process should be, we need to discuss these alternatives and not just make a snap judgment because you hand us some papers. That's been our fault so far. And I think we just got to take the bull by the horns and sit down and discuss it among ourselves. I do think that there is another way, but it has to be simultaneously, and it is not about building a nation. As the administrator said earlier, one of the problems we face as elected people who are in charge of protecting your trust, we have to make sure that other people don't come in and steal the trust. We have people going to Kamehameha schools now that are not Hawaiian. And the lawsuits that we get and other ali'i trusts, if we don't get a classification that we have a political relationship with the US, political, they're going to whack all our trust. Right now we have racist groups against us. If you read the blogs and whatever, Grassroots is run by a racist group. And Senator Sloan, who's in my district. These guys call everything we do racist. We don't want the U.S. to think that we're racist. We're not racist. We want to protect. You know what? If we don't have order, I'm calling the cops. I'm not going to put up with nonsense. If you don't respect us, how do you expect us to respect you? So give us a chance, okay?
Respect is not demanded.
No.
Trustee, you have additional questions?
Yeah, there is a solution to this, but it's not going to happen right now with people yelling like this in Raleigh. You know, it just ain't going to happen. And what's happening now is that a lot of Hawaiians who saw what happened here last week, they're saying, you know, forget it. Forget it, you guys. You know, why do Hawaiians have to look like we're such idiots, fighting with each other all the time? That's where it comes from. You know, let's call for order. If you keep on, we're just going to recess. I said we're all call a recess. Call a recess.
Let her talk, but that's what it is. Her talk. Thank you.
We ask that you folks respect Trustee Alcala's comment.
She calls us idiots?
Actually,
No, listen.
I'm not in that, so just let her.
You know,
People, let it go, let her talk.
if they were really listening and not talking when I was talking, they would have heard me say that people think all Hawaiians are idiots. You know, because we can't get along with each other. And this kind of shouting from the peanut gallery and all of that, that's not helpful. That doesn't help us. That doesn't help us.
Additional questions?
No, yeah, only for our staff, because my feeling is that if we're going to pour more money and extend deadlines, the trustees have to be involved. We're going to take the hits from all these people. We have to be making the decisions, not staff. And this is the problem. Thank you.
For an increase in the budget.
Not for me.
Additional questions, I'll call on Trustee Ahuna, followed by Trustee Lindsay.
Thank you, Bumpy.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to make a few comments about this legislative process. 50,000 that did. There's 350,000 more people that didn't sign up and deserve to be heard. In this nation that we're seeking under the state, my question is, if we become this nation, will we have access to our cultural sites? Will we be able to save our iwi or our burials? Will we be autonomous in this government-to-government relationship, or are we still under the state? This blood quantum is something that is very, very, a part of who we are. But yet everybody says it's not about race. But yet in the apology bill, they tell you who the people are. We are Maoli. I'm not a Native Hawaiian. That's two people. And in order to become one, we cannot with this 50% and more big N or 49-0 small N. We got two people, and we cannot come one. Our kings and queens fought for unification, and I am here to fight for unification for all of our beneficiaries. I'm sorry I'm not the 125,000 who did sign up for Kanai Yonabalu, and that's because I stand up for all and for me, when we talk about this government-to-government entity, what are we talking about? Are we going to change our constitution? Are we still going to have this blood quantum on us? Will we be talking to the federal government, but still have this thing laid over our heads?
Somebody answer.
We cannot speak for ourselves. These people are all here because we represent them. I'm not the beneficiary. They are. The people, this is the voice. Okay, and there's two sides, and the reason why there's two sides is because there have always been two sides. There's two Native Hawaiians.
Divided.
And we divided. How can we unify and become one? Yeah, and I'm learning here today, and I listen. I don't interrupt people when they're speaking, because I want to listen to everybody's comments, even yours and mine. And I respect you. Thank you. But I want you to know that I am here to support the Maoli, the race of this island, of this state. And this is who we are. The royal pattern is proof to who we are. Act 195, the Maoli is proof to who we are. But yet we have this one process that we're seeking. I am asking that we seek a process for all beneficiaries. And we gotta come together, and we're not fighting each other. I saw GMO issues more worse than this. This is natural. This is what we're supposed to be doing, fighting for who we are. We are all Kanaka. And if you like to say we are all Hawaiians, okay, so be it. But let me tell you one thing. When Hawaiians flourish, so does Hawaii name. And everyone calls this great place home.
I'd just like to say that having been the trustee that went to the most town hall meetings, I'd like to confirm all that our administration has presented in that our beneficiaries have expressed all those concerns that were listed on our board this morning. And I think their recommendations for the extension, for the added education, and for another role, whereas our people that didn't want to sign up on Kanani Oluwalu has the opportunity to sign up on an independent role. I think that that's very reasonable recommendations for the board to consider, and I would definitely be supporting that.
Trustee Bobby Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too, like Trustee Lindsay across the way, am supportive. I appreciate the administration summary of the three major themes and the accompanying recommendation. So if we bring it to the table for a vote today, I am totally supportive of what is being suggested by the administration. I would like to add to Kehao's list, along with the petition, the apology resolution, President Cleveland's message to Congress in December of 1893, which is a summation of Minister Blunt's investigation. I think it's a critical piece that should be inserted into the record.
Trustee Napoleon, followed by Trustee Stender. This is the presentation that was prepared and delivered today in total. I'd like to ask for if you haven't received copies of it.
Oh, yes.
The total, because I think it's very well placement of information previous and currently and going forward, but also I think there are details that Kihal provided in this presentation that are not necessarily included here in our handout, previous handout. So I want to make sure this, the whole picture is available, because when we move to the next steps on this matter, we'll be very prepared. Trustee Oswald Stender.
I'm just trying to bring some consensus here. I think all of the trustees have consistently said that you are the ones to form this new government. I don't know why it's taking so long to have you do it. It's only been talk, and so many people in the room. You know, to me, if you would organize a group, a leadership group that would work with our administration to tell our administration how you see this unfolding. Right now, it seems to be coming out of our office, which it shouldn't. It should be coming from you. So if you would sit and organize yourself to have a lead group working with them to do whatever you want to do to form this government. I think reading Milani's outline is a process. I mean, and you should be doing it, not. And if I'm not getting confused as to why we keep doing this. We seem to be out there doing all the talking and all the advertising. You should be doing it.
With our money. With our assets. You are appropriating all this for you guys. You wouldn't be able to do it either. You didn't have the money.
Okay,
We set aside a budget for it. There is a budget.
You guys can carte blanche.
Okay, now we're gonna, if there's no other questions, I'm gonna acknowledge some rules that we're gonna conduct ourselves, because we're gonna shift now into what we call community concerns. There will be no decision making today. Okay, because there's a lot, today is your day to provide testimony. We've already received 50 sign up and more to come. We're gonna give you each 5 minutes to give testimony. We're going to identify, give me the fans, show them the fans. We ask that you comply to the 5-minute rule to allow everybody, and at the end of the day, if you want to come back, you will be permitted to come back. I've tapped those that are on neighbor islands and also Kupuna that if you would like to go out of order, please approach my staff that we can take you out of order. All of these are from neighbor islands, from Kona, Big Island, Maui, and also from Molokai. So whatever you do, if you want to go out of order in neighbor island, I will provide for you to take you out of order in Kupuna too. Okay, so with that said, if you haven't signed up with our beneficiary community question forms, please do so. Again, today was this is how we roll here. We did an analysis of all of the town meetings as was described by our staff. With that, we have recommendations in some of the areas that have been presented to the trustees for reconsideration from a plan that we approved on March 6th of this year. And we're looking at to reconsider that plan, not to increase the budget, but to reconsider the plan to allow for additional education, a timetable to spread out a little longer, and also to look at the most contentious aspect is what they call a block roll registration. So we're seriously looking at that. At 11:30, I'm going to ask the trustees that we recuse ourselves into executive session, because we're hoping that we're going to consult with our attorneys on whether or not we can proceed with an alternative or second roll as been described by staff as something legal that can occur as part of this process in building our nation. So that is the intentions today. But as I indicated at our last board meeting, Today's meeting is to allow you for input to the proposal that has been prepared by our administrative staff. We ask that you be civil and respectful. We welcome all of you to our boardroom, and what we don't want to end up doing is being able to yell across the room. So I just ask that you folks be respectful. We did not call for additional security or to get the sheriff's. I just telling you that I don't feel that I should feel. None of us on the table should feel threatened by our people. Now we ask that you folks treat us with aloha and civility. That's all I ask. So, excuse me? So we ask that you help us to provide your respect and your testimony. We've heard some questions that has been raised, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to review and fully discuss this among ourselves. So I guess I have a request from, the first one up is Kaipo Sharkisian from Waimanalo, Kaipo. We have Kali Gumapak followed from Big Island. I want to welcome Kaipo. What do you see in that name, Kaipo?
Sarkisian.
Oh, Sarkisian, okay. We call him.
Trustee.
How for providing it right?
Introduce yourself and then just recognize the trustees. Aloha trustees, my name is Dr. Sukisi.
Ready to proceed.
Hello everyone, my name is Kaipo. Hello to Dr. Crab and the trustees and to everyone here today. I stand before you today on behalf of my family to show full support to Dr. Crab and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs trustees regarding the letter of inquiry to the U.S. Senator John Kerry. I commend Dr. Crab and all trustees on taking the hard step together to bring light and merit to questions pertaining to the legality of OHA's role in the process of nation building. Before Kanai'oluwalu or any other type of petition or roll call is set in motion, it is imperative that we continue to educate the people and the community leaders on the factual information that only a few have taken time to uncover. The task has been difficult and at times overwhelming and emotional, but progress is evident. To move forward as a nation and community, it is crucial that we continue the education process and understand that the majority of us should be educated either in depth or at some basic level. Dissemination of the relative facts of our past that continue to affect the legality of the pressing issue of the occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom is a must. Not everyone has the time or the resources to be formally educated in every aspect of this issue. A simplified curriculum through such mediums as television, radio, online, etc. would give the people the opportunity to educate themselves. This would provide a foundation in which we as a community can move together toward a common goal. With all this being said, I want to thank our ancestors for uniting and being not only courageous, but successful in their efforts to sign the only petition we truly need, the Kue Anti-Annexation Petition. The groundwork and foundation has been set for us long ago, so it is up to us to support what is already legally there. It is extremely encouraging to see that the ancestors of our past, like the ancestors of our past, that OHA in this present day understands the value of coming together on the letter of inquiry set forth to Senator John Kerry. It is my deepest desire and hope that we can honor our ancestors and move forward in a united understanding of the facts of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Thank you guys for your time.
Big Island, he can make a request if he wants to go out of order. Don't worry, I get him off cab, I know who's who. Please proceed, if people coming all the way from Moko County.
Aloha kako trustees.
Hello.
Mahalo for
allowing me to speak, and I'm very happy to be here this morning. My name is Kale Gumapak. I am the CEO for Laulima Title Search and Claims. We totally support the letter that was written to Secretary of State John Kerry, because it is crucial in the work that we are doing with Laulima Title Search and Claims. I became a target for the state of Hawaii and the United States. My phones, email, and all forms of communications have been tapped and monitored by FBI, NSA, Homeland Security, and every other alphabet soup agency you can think of in the United States. We were terrorists. We weren't terrorists. All we do is help people save their homes from foreclosure by teaching them that every title in Hawaii is defective as a result of the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And they have title insurance that is supposed to pay the debt according to their contract. My legal team, Dr. Keanu Sai, Dexter Kayama, and claims adjuster Nancy Monroe, put together legal arguments that were irrefutable, making us a legal target for the existence of the state of Hawaii and the United States to hold this illegal grip on islands of Hawaii on behalf of our clients, both outside and inside the courts. On November 21st, 2013 at 7:15, Lieutenant Patrick Kawai and a dozen deputy sheriffs of the Fugitive Task Force appeared at my driveway to enforce an unlawful eviction order of an unfair and irregular trial signed by Circuit Court Judge Greg Nakamura. I gathered Lieutenant Kawai and his deputies together and informed them that they were about to commit a war crime, being complicit in enforcing this unlawful order. Prior to this unlawful encounter, the courts were presented with irrefutable and overwhelming evidence that the court has no jurisdiction in this matter as a result of no treaty of annexation, the Liliuokalani-Cleveland executive agreements, the Kue petition, the 1898 congressional resolution of annexation that was illegally done by the U.S. Congress, Larson v. Hawaiian Kingdom at The Hague, a Hawaiian Kingdom protest and demand that was submitted to the UN General Assembly by Dr. Tsai in 2012, the 1887 Band-Aid Constitution, and etc. Overwhelming information. The courts ignored that. I finally learned the truth about my political genealogy from Dr. Keanu Sai. I read his dissertation. I hope some of you will read his dissertation. The Liliuokalani-Cleveland executive agreements, UMAU-KL, congressional records of both the House and the Senate during the 1898 congressional resolution to annexation of Hawaii. These were mind-blowing events for me. Testimonies of Alfred Mahan and Schofield in their attempt to take Hawaii as a military objection so that they could control Hawaii. This was an illegal overthrow. It took me 58 years to learn the truth of what happened to Hawaii and me. I graduated from Kamehameha schools. All my life, I was living the lie of the puppet regime of the United States without ever knowing it. I was born in Waimanalo, went to Waimanalo Elementary School, where I learned how to pledge allegiance to the flag. From kindergarten, and where we learned during Reveille, we were supposed to stop and salute the American flag on school grounds. We learned to sing patriotic American songs of purple mountains and amber waves of green. But I live in Waimanalo. I don't know where Purple Mountain's Wave of Green is. My elementary teachers taught me.
Can you start summarizing because your 5 minutes is up?
Okay.
I apologize for interrupting you.
My elementary teachers taught me how to either be a good pilgrim or an obedient Indian during Thanksgiving and May Day programs. And let's not forget the May Day poll. The 1906 DOE program of indoctrination was working very well 50 years later and continues to work today on the OHA trustees. That's why we're around here, because of Americanization. The letter that Dr. Crabb submitted is very important because now it puts the gorilla on the United States back, because they know that everything that they have done is illegal for the last 121 years. And they cannot continue to do this. And I have 2 more pages that I wrote. And I spent the whole day yesterday preparing my testimony. And I flew all the way over here and spending $300 to do this. And I want to get to tell you guys this in 5 minutes. They call them okay.
Oh, yeah, do you have copies? Oh, no, we can make mahalo copies.
They call them mahalo. Okay.
Regard to the speaker's state chair, Uncle Louis Agar Chapuna. He kato. After Uncle Louis Agar, the next kupuna is Uncle Joe Tasso.
Thank you.
Aloha and greetings, trustees, and thank you for allowing me to say a few words. I saw this in the paper. It says, rule aims at recognition for Native Hawaiians. I think this is a very interesting thing for somebody to repeat what we've been living under for 121 years.
Please put the microphone closer to the
Yeah.
This looking for recognition. This is not sovereignty. And I don't think we should be doing that, looking for what the Akaka bills have been promoting for the last many years, beginning with his first bill, S81. This is where this all began, that we should be grateful that we can be recognized. But recognition, again, I repeat, does not mean sovereignty. So please, let us not continue that. Rather, the valuable time spent here in expressing our views would better be served. For instance, if we make a commitment or a decision to pursue the reinstatement of our treasury, which was lost in 1893 and 1898. We don't have the treasury to carry on this fight. But the irony of this situation is that we have what is called a seeded land trust. The seeded land trust monies go 80% into the DOE. The same day the DOE gets that check of about, I'm estimating, $75 million, they write a check for the same amount to the general fund. OHA gets 20%. 80% of that money, like 15 million, .1. But the trust is made up of 2.5 million acres, as I recall, of crown and government lands. And nobody else put in even 1 acre. So how come 80% goes into the general fund, which is to the benefit of the community, and everybody is enjoying that money to pay for those services, repair roads, which are sometimes really undrivable. And I think, to wind up my little complaint, we could be using our time more wisely if we started now, because it's going to take some time to do this, or to reverse what's been put on us for 121 years, is look at trying to recover or reorganize our treasury. We don't have any money to continue this work that has to be done. We've, in the past, tried to get funding. It has not always been successful. But of late, I think I understand that we've spent now close to $6 million for this new enrollment. And it has as its basis recognition, I think I've heard referred to several times. I ask you, please do not do this. Do not accept these categories. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, is Uncle Joe Castro. Yes. Come forward once we get Uncle situated.
Thank you, colleague.
Aloha kako. My two most concerns two words. Tomorrow and blood quantum. Why tomorrow? Kihiukaina. The children. What we're going to leave behind for them. Right now, a lot of our children are going to sleep without dinner. Right now. Without a roof over their head. Right now. Many saying this before they go sleep. I like my daddy better. I like my mommy better. Mother's Day. Mother's Day. Remember? Because they never have enough guards, the children couldn't go to women's correctional facility to be with their mommy. Tomorrow. You gotta think about tomorrow. Another Sunday, or was it a weekend, guards did not show up for work. at the facility and nobody could go see their fathers, their husbands, their sons, their brothers. What has the system done? They put the peanuts in jail. They put us all in jail. Children are saying, I want my mommy back. I want my daddy back. And we are saying, we want our nation back. So we can hand it to our children. What's better than it is today? You know, I share this with lots of people. We gotta be willing to do it, and it will be done. Our ancestors did it, and this is how they did it. They were willing. And it went like this: we, the willing, led by the unknowing, is doing the impossible for the ungrateful. We have done so much, so long, with so little. We can do anything with nothing. And that's what our ancestors did. They made this beautiful paradise we call our home. But why does it look and smell like hell today? You know why? We're not in charge. That's why. We gotta take back the charge. I get only 1 minute left. And in a minute, I'm going to talk about blood quantum. As a commissioner on Hawaiian homes, and I don't speak for the commission, I only speak for myself. With this, the blood quantum that divided our communities will no longer be there. Because we're going to be one. And everybody, mind you, everybody is going to benefit. The Hawaiian Homes Department will now become the Department of Land and Natural Resources, and we will take the item back. Thank you.
The next speaker is from Moko Kiawi from Kiau, Ms. Nancy Monroe, please come forward. Followed by Shane Cobb Adams from Anamula, Hawaii.
Aloha kako. I'm very privileged to be here, and honestly, I feel a little out of place. Obviously, I am not Hawaiian. I came here in 1976 to OHA for college. I wanted to learn how to pronounce things, so I took Hawaiian language class and other classes. Auntie Edith Kanakaole, Puakanahele. We had Nalani come in sometimes, Kalani Mainiki. I loved it. I didn't realize what a treasure that was. I got hired at Hawaiian Tel in '79, retired a couple years ago after 33 years. The last 4 years, I was at the Cook Street office, where your buildings were. And it's been 4 years ago that I met some guys and found out that the Queen was supposed to have been restored to the throne. No one ever talked about that in the classes that I took. I was shocked. I'm like, what? How can I find out more? That's wrong. I learned about Dr. Sai. One of the guys I met was a student of his. And I educated myself. I'm not Hawaiian. I'm not going to benefit from any of your OHA programs. But I love this place. I've been here almost 40 years. Then I learned that there was never a lawful treaty of annexation ceding Hawaii to the United States. That blew my mind. There is no such thing as ceded lands. It's crown lands still. There is a process under international law to deoccupy an occupied nation, and we are occupied. My biggest concern right now is what's going on at Oahualoa. They're creating another Kaho'olawe. The biggest problem with this occupation is that we are now a target for international nuclear strikes. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. But to me, the occupation of this island means America's got to go. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm American, I can't help it. But I will stand in line the first day I can to take the oath to become a Hawaiian Kingdom subject. Okay. Because prior to the overthrow, it was not just Kanaka Maoli, who I have the utmost respect for as the first people of this land, but there were Portuguese, Chinese, Japanese, Norwegians, Haoles. They were Hawaiian Kingdom subjects, and they had all the rights, civil, political, as the Hawaiians. Okay, I'm not trying to usurp anything. I saw a video a couple nights ago called Nuclear Savage about what happened to the Marshallese. I thought I knew a little bit about Bikini Atoll. This opened my mind. They deliberately experimented on the Marshallese people and what happened with the nuclear fallout. And I am so afraid. Russia doesn't hate Hawaii. China doesn't hate Hawaii. North Korea does not hate Hawaii. They hate America. We are a target. And I seriously feel like we need to deoccupy, restore the Hawaiian Kingdom. There is a process under international law to do so. If you are not aware of what's going on at the international level, the Geneva Academy has just agreed to list Hawaii as an occupied territory in their war report coming out in December. This is huge. The recognition of the existence of the sovereignty of the Hawaiian Kingdom is out there. It's becoming more public knowledge. The Swiss Foreign Ministry is about to make a decision as to become the protecting power for the Hawaiian Kingdom under the laws of international law in order to discuss the deoccupation and negotiate the exit of America. Okay, there is a process to restore the government. It involves the highest ranking military commander here under President Obama, which is Samuel Locklear III, all right? He needs to reconvene the Hawaiian Kingdom government. Hawaiian Kingdom constitutional law is what we should be under. Anything having to do with American law after 1893, January 17th, is illegal. So that unfortunately makes the state illegal. Unless you can show a valid treaty of annexation, unfortunately, OHA is illegal. And all the money that you spend that's from ceded lands, that's not your money to spend. That should have gone into the Hawaiian Kingdom coffers, the treasury, and you're committing war crimes by spending this money. Okay. I do what I do with Laulima title search and claims to right the wrong that was done to the Queen. Holy girl from Oregon. And I want the restoration of the kingdom in the worst way. I devote my life. I retire. My retirement is to right the wrong and bring justice to the Queen.
We need that holy girl for more. Not a joke.
Hello. Mahalo for having me. I'm Shane Cobb Adams from Anahola, Kauai. I work here in Oahu for the Living Life Source Foundation in Manoa. I just wanted to share a couple things. There's been some interesting comments this morning about the legal aspects. And I know you guys are meeting with your lawyers later to consider those because it's on the agenda. And so that leads me to believe that the people sitting at this table maybe don't have some of the legal expertise. And that's common for all boards to make the decision. So we often defer to the lawyers. But what I want to point out in my short 5 minutes is that the voice of the people is changing because we're becoming educated. When the board resolution that Kamanapono referred to was passed by the OHA board to pursue recognition, the level of understanding of the legal history and our history as a people was quite different because things like this book weren't written yet. So I'm not sure how many of the board members have seen this book, Uamalkea, Sovereignty Endures. But it's a very good book that the DOA is picking up, and it's being taught in the schools to educate our people and our Hawaiians about the history of our people, both at the university and the high school level. And so what this book shares in common with Dr. Tsai's dissertation is that several of the questions that the chief executive here has asked of Senator Kerry have already been asked of neutral third parties legally in the international community. So in 1999, when the Larson case was adjudicated in the International Court of Justice in the arbitration wing, those questions that Kamana Opono raised with John Kerry in his letter were also addressed by the International Court of Justice, because OHA cannot walk into the ICJ. Neither can any state agency or the state of Utah. You have to be a sovereign nation state to enter into the International Court of Justice. And so when the standing of the parties was confirmed in 1999, that was an international, neutral, third-party recognition of the continuation of the Hawaiian Kingdom politically. It was a confirmation that the Hawaiian Kingdom continues to exist lawfully under international law. And it was a confirmation that America, in fact, is occupying our nation. So federal recognition presumes that annexation occurred, and we heard some references earlier today. Annexation would have required a treaty. I challenge anyone in this room to produce that treaty. I challenge any lawyer to produce that treaty. Because and if there's one that comes up that says Hawaii has become part of the United States, I will accept it. But until that day, I have to, based on the facts, conclude that the Hawaiian Kingdom continues to exist. All of us have rights and responsibilities under the Constitution of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And when I say the Hawaiian Kingdom, I'm talking about the constitutional body politic started by Kauikeauli that became the first non-European nation admitted to the family of nations. Now, the family of nations evolved into the UN. Our ali'i and our kupuna were so akamai that from the time English words came and writing, we mastered and became bilingual within 20 years. We formatted our government and the Hawaiian nation under international law and became the first people outside of Europe to join the United Nations. And Hawaiian nationhood wasn't so much about codifying Hawaiian laws and managing Hawaiians, but it was to keep other nations out, to define our territory. Why do Hawaiians have all the problems that we do? Who's accountable for that? The Americans. They're the ones that occupied us. They're the ones that took over our country, and the social problems that we have, the social indoctrination that Uncle was saying makes us salute the American flag. The ethnocide and the political genocide of our people was at the hands of the Americans. To negotiate with them on behalf of our people for recognition, it's like Kaleko said, the occupier and the oppressor is never going to free the oppressed. So my challenge to you is to rethink this strategy of recognition, to paddle down a river that leads to being like American Indians. I've been on the Native Hawaiian Education Association board. I've gone with our sister agency, the National Indian Education Association, to the reservations. I know what's going on the reservations. We don't want nothing like that. The nation within a nation program that the Indians get is not what we deserve. It's not what our kupuna demand of us. And so I would ask you to rethink this process. The questions brought up about education and extending the timeline are very wise. And I see wisdom in taking the time to make sure that we're all in the one canoe, educated together as a people, paddling the same direction. And that will take time. And that, for me, that's what it's about. It's not about preserving the money and the trust. I know those are issues that come up, but when you start calculating how much money the 4.1 million acres of Hawaii is worth, and the 3-mile exclusive economic zone that goes up into space, and all the satellites that pass through Hawaiian airspace, we have a rich and bountiful nation. It's just America's collecting all of that money and giving us pennies. And so to continue down the federal recognition road is to step over dollars to pick up pennies. And it doesn't do justice to the history of our people. Marvelous.
Members, I'm going to ask for your consideration to defer the executive session. Since we're not doing decision making, we can carry this over to the June 5th meeting. What I was more worried about was taking an executive session, dismissing everybody since there's not inadequate seating for everybody while we deliberate. So I'm going to seek, I guess I can just move to defer the executive session was listed on the agenda.
So we're going to executive.
Yeah, on defer. So we'll continue with the public hearing at this point, and then on June 5th, we'll list this as another opportunity to discuss with the attorney. Okay, our next speaker is Alika Dishe from Kariokona, followed by Leighton Sui from
Sale.
TSEU, sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Hello, my kako.
Hello.
My name is Alika Dishe, and I am the Kalaimoku and the Chancellor of the Royal Order of Kamehameha Ekahi. I've never had an opportunity to be present with the entire board. So I'd like to do at this time is to clarify and officially present our position within all of this. First of all, the Royal Order of Kamehameha Ekahi believes and stands firm that the Kingdom of Hawaii still exists. The second thing that we do is, in 1865, Kamehameha V granted us as an institution a decree that we are an institution of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Henceforth, our mission since then was to preserve and perpetuate the ancient customs and traditions of Hawaii. Therefore, based on that, the only roll call that we will officially recognize is the Kuge position. It is the voice of our ancestors. And it's important that we listen to our ancestors. It's important. Why? Hawaii, our Hawaiian people have occupied Hawaii for over 2,000 years. The first 1,000, there were no alii. There were no rulers. There was only Makaya and Nana. They were people, practitioners, fishermen, planters, color workers. They were known as the OHA system. And there was no problem, they did it. Sometimes we get wrapped up and confused in our, excuse the term, but Western political thinking. We need to come back and start thinking, no, Hawaii. What would our ancestors have done? How would they have reacted to all of this? It's important that we go back to the basics. It's very simple. We don't have to, I know this is a complicated matter, but if we don't start to build our foundation in the ways of the Makai Ainana, having everybody, all of Hawaii be a part of it, this is the answer to it. Kanai Walu, the Royal Order of Kamehameha, will not support anything that divides our people. There is ways of doing this by including all of Hawaii, all of it. So, having said that, the Royal Order of Kamehameha has taken our kuleana very seriously, and we humbly will be in the future taking the lead to form one VA and comprise it of all of our Hawaiian leaders, the Royal Societies, the Ali'i Trust, and leaders that are respected throughout our Hawaii to be a part of this VA. And we will look forward very humbly to take the lead in guiding this VA. So I humbly mahalo everybody for giving us the opportunity to present our thing. And we look forward to working with all of us in this room. Not just one, not just two, all of us. Mahalo. Mahalo.
Oro ka paa makali kai le manu kai e ino mako kame ke kulume ka The canoe sails on the surface of the ocean. Lele manu, the birds has guided us to Hawaii. We come in respect and we come humble. We come in one canoe. We started off with one canoe. I wear the iwi of our ancestors. This keeps my knowledge strong. Because we all Hawaiians. And non-Hawaiians who support us. The key part is the truth. To get a process, reconciliation, we need to know the truth. Once the truth is been out, the world knows who we are, then we can do a process. Without the truth, we cannot move. We know that. The Bible tells us that anything you look at, truth first. That's the bottom foundation, is truth. I've been very fortunate in my lifetime. My kupuna in here, Keolewa, Poholokai, they're in here. I spent 40 years going to see my family, Poholokai. When I sailed on the Hokulea to Japan, when we entered Yokohama, I was in full regalia, standing on the Hokulea, entering, bringing back the time of Kalakaua, the United Emperor Meiji. Because of that, we was able to have tea at the Imperial House for the princess. She wanted to hear more stories. That's important. People in Nuru got to know us. They have treaties with us. It's been there for hundreds of years. All we ask is for the truth. That's the key. The key is the truth. And all of us here, we know that. It's very simple. Until we can find the truth, until the world knows the kingdom of Hawaii, then our people will be happy. Because that's our duty. Our duty is to protect our kupuna and their wishes and what they have signed. We work too hard. We fight too hard. I was born and raised in Waiau. We had land from Manulu Road all the way down to Blaisdell Park. I used to fish when I was a kid. Plenty of fish. Plenty. Oysters. Opai. Today I scared eat the fish and go home. Why? Why? So that's why I cannot eat the fish again. But you see what happened. Nobody controlled the environment. Everything was kala and military bomb. And it hurts. It hurts our land so much. You can see it. Like the brother saying, our family, the children. I've worked the Pumpkin Carving Festival, and we raised money for Kikyokaina and for U.S. Hawaii wounded warriors. We had mothers from the prison. We were so fortunate to get them out to spend some time with their kids to carve a pumpkin. But we had to go into the prisons, work the system. They gave us one day where the parents came out. When I looked at that, I cried. I cried because all Hawaiians. I look at the mamas and I look at the children, I see the grandmas. One wahine inside and she comes to, how you uncle? Oh,
I go, oh, we swap. I look at that and I see her grandchildren, she goes, 419, long-time friend. That's what hurts. And what are we doing about that? We need to be local. In one canoe. We came here on one canoe, we're going to be together in one canoe. And that's all we want to be, respectful and humble. No matter where we come, all of us, we got to be in the same canoe. She ain't going to make it. I sailed many canoes, I sailed all over the world. I sailed all Polynesia, I sailed all Asia. I sailed to the Panama Canal, all up to Nova Scotia. I've been to foreign countries. I spent time with the King and Queen in New Zealand, talk about land rights, water rights. Just kuka kuka. I was in Belgium for Father Demon to represent the Hawaiian people, to do the Oli in the chat for St. Paul, because I wanted to be represented on my own diet. Because that's how serious I feel about this kingdom. That's how serious I feel about our kupuna. And now, that's where we are. When we're strong together, we'll be together, and it will happen. Mahalo.
No, that was LinkedIn.
That was LinkedIn. Sorry, LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now we'll go back to the original sign-up. Michelle Kauhani, followed by Claire Hughes. Maybe she can read this alone. Claire Hughes. Followed by Lancelot Heidi Lincoln.
Aloha trustees, mahalo for this opportunity to speak with you this morning. As you know, I support the Recognition Act, Act 195, and the formation of an OHA. I also support the timeline that is provided in that act for us to get started with recognition of Native Hawaiian people. I also agree with the suggestion that was made to immediately have OHA put out contract with an agency under the open bidding contract process to assist with OHA formation and with the elections. There are 130,000 people and their families who have signed up. We agree that there is more than one way of thinking of how to form a government. The act is for recognition, not for a government. OHA promised neutrality in this process, and I want you to reaffirm that stance with us, that this will be a neutral process because it's beginning to not look so neutral. As elected officials of state-recognized agencies such as this, OHA trustees agree to uphold city and county, federal, and state laws and acts, particularly those that may ask you to do something for the governments. Act 195 is such a government act, and therefore, it is your kuleana to carry it out. I ask that you do this in as neutral a process as you can. There are many of us that agree with all that's said this morning. All that's said so far. Our ways and means are a little different, perhaps, but I also want Hawaiians to have a say, more say in our going forward as a group. And I want to be in Leighton's canoe because he knows where to go, obviously, and how to come back. But this is a kako thing. You have to make room for me. I will make room for you. That's how it works. So all of our thoughts have to come together. And I may not raise my voice as high as others, but I could if I wanted to. But I think we all understand each other if we just give it some thought. And I have every confidence that we are bright enough to learn all that we need to know. You think I don't know about what happened in history? I happen to know. It wasn't taught to me in school. I do nothing but read. So I know what happened. I don't like it either. But we need to do a process that meets more of a smooth pathway. We don't want to be wiped out, okay? We want to come out of this fight with something to give to our children and our grandchildren. We don't want to come out with less. Be careful. I yield my 1 minute to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Heidi Lincoln, followed by Carly Morales.
Can I please ask all of you sitting to rise and stand, please? Those of you supporting Kanai Wala Wala, have a seat. All those support Kanai Wala Wala, have a seat. Is that it? So the rest of us do not support this organization. Thank you very much. You may have a seat. Hello. My name is Lancelot Haili Lincoln. I am Kamehameha 8. And I have my moko auha. You don't know what that means? It means genealogy to prove this. Direct descendant of Kamehameha 1. I come from Makaha. I now live in Waialu. Just come here to share a little with all of you because I've been in this since I was 18 years old. I started revolution for the Hawaiian people to fight and steal our land back from the white man like they stole it from us. But I had to stop. And I've changed since then. Grown, became more knowledgeable, went back to school. I'm still in college right now as we speak. Well, I'm taking a summer break right now. But I just wanted to share this with all of you because I feel that we can do this process together as one people. As long as we all join together and help one another, we can do it. I want to share with all of you, Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians, all across the Hawaiian Islands, the United States, and the rest of the world. I have family in Europe. This is why I include the whole world. That we don't need to be recognized by the state of Hawaii and the federal government of the United States of America, being they are, as we all know, unlawfully, illegally occupying our kingdom nation of Kamehameha I. Since the overthrow of our beloved Queen, Liliuokalani in 1893. A peaceful way to sovereignty, our kupuna showed us the way many years ago with their Ku'e petition. It is my feeling that we need to update and make a new Ku'e petition for the present time, respectfully using their Ku'e petition alongside our new Ku'e petition, forwarding these to Governor Abercrombie in the United States of Hawaii, in the state of Hawaii, and also the President Obama, the United States of America. These petitions are the simplest, most peaceful means of gaining our independence from the state of Hawaii and the federal government of the United States of America. Today we have many sovereignty groups all across our islands, and OHA was created in 1978 for the benefit and betterment of our Hawaiian people. Many Hawaiians today has or have had good and bad experiences with OHA. It is my thought and feeling that to correct this and humiliate Kanai I'Oluwalu, we all need to stand as one and support a petition for OHA to be independent from the state of Hawaii and the federal government of the United States of America. My hope is that you all join me in support of this petition for our independence, to reinstate our monarchy and our kingdom of Kamehameha I in memory of our ancestors and beloved Queen Liliuokalani. What are your thoughts about this? Hoku o ko'a, to establish independence. Mahalo. Thank you very much.
Arlene Ornelas, followed by Sue D. Carlson. It's a box scores. We have 43 more to go.
Aloha trustees, thank you. My name is Arlene Ornelas. I'm from Waimanalo. My family grew up in Kailua. I believe in Kanai I'Oluwalu because it's the path that was offered. So I'm on board. It's what I can leave for my kids, my family. I will collect Social Security someday because I worked hard. We were brought up a state. My parents believed it was a state. I vote for the president, the governor, and I vote for trustees. I hope to vote for a delegate to represent me on the law that still needs to be built. I could be in this. See, there's waves crashing all over. It ain't gonna be easy, but I'm ready to move in this canoe that's gonna be built. Thank you.
Followed by Randy Quinones.
Let's see. Oh.
Okay. Aloha, Chair Michelle. Aloha, Trustee Lindsay. Aloha, Trustee Lindsay. Aloha, Trustee Ahuna. And aloha, Trustee Akana. And Kafohana.
Trustee Stender.
Oh, where is he? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let me renegotiate my eyeballs here. Okay, I won't spend our time revisiting this past month events, except to say When did all of you guys become the bad guys? Why did some in the community feel it's okay to bash any of you? Respect and courtesy was replaced by yelling and trying to intimidate you. Some, if not all of you, may have been hurt by these mean and extremely disrespectful comments directed at you. We may disagree, but when is it to be purposely hurtful? So I stand with you, Chair, and all you trustees, and Kapuhana, and ask everyone, choose your words before you speak. You're speaking to another Hawaiian. Recently, questions have been raised about whether it is legal to proceed because the kingdom still exists. There are those in the community who support their own path, an independence path, an international path, and that is their right. We do not harass or bully you for the path you have chosen. The Suganuma Carlson Ohana's path is the right of the people to exercise our vote for us to decide how to govern, what to govern, and why we govern. This is the right of self-governance, and it is an international right. The nation, the Lohui, was never extinguished. The Lohui lives. It lives in the people themselves. It lives in us. We support OHA's current timeline for the election of delegates and the OHA. Let us follow more. And before I leave, I want to show you that these are my 2 physical therapists that work on my legs to get my knees going again. There are 125,000 voices, we always say that, and they cannot all be here. So I just want you to remember those that are not here does support this initiative. Please consider that, trustees, when you deliberate. Mahalo.
Hey, Randy.
Aloha, aloha kako. I'm the guy. Aloha, everybody. Thank you for having me. I want to say I'm one of the 350,000 who's not represented here. Many of us are represented today. I want to thank Trustee Machado and Trustee Akana for talking about your support for federal recognition and possibly state recognition, and relating it to your fiduciary responsibilities to conserve and save and protect the trust assets of the Office of Foreign Affairs, and related to the ongoing sort of attacks and vulnerabilities that we have been hearing about since the year 2000, essentially since Rice versus Cayetano. I see it as the same story that we've heard about for a long time. And that's essentially, from my understanding of hearing your support of it, that is the strategy to safeguard these assets and to fulfill your fiduciary responsibilities. Native Hawaiian governance, whether it be state recognition, federal recognition, restoration of the kingdom, independence, or some 5th, 6th, 7th opportunity, is a completely different thing. What you guys are talking about is your job, what you're elected to do. You're not governors, you're not even a council. You are trustees of the board of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. You have fiduciary responsibilities. You're supposed to protect the resources and work towards the betterment of Native Hawaiians. You're not necessarily supposed to build a government for us. Do your job. I support you in your job. Please do that. Safeguard these assets. Talk to your lawyers. Find out if there are additional methods and strategies for protecting the trust, for protecting us from these types of legal problems that may come up and challenges. Starting a government here from state employees is not the right way to go. If you talk to any American Indian tribe and explain to them this process, they laugh us out of the room. There is never a point in time when a government is started with the agreement and the wholehearted embracing by state officials. This is just the wrong way to do it. So we have 2 sides. We have 2 things going on. You are doing your job to protect the rights and the responsibilities of your office, and there's Native Hawaiian governance. You're putting them together and telling us that they're the same thing. My left hand is not my right hand. So please do your job, and let's keep these two things separate. Mahalo.
Judge, you will be representing Prime Minister Henry Noah. Aloha, Judge.
Aloha, trustees and everyone else present. Prime Minister Noah is not able to be here today, so I wanted to read this document that he asked me to present. It's titled Demand Letter to OHA Trustees. Kule'a ikan nu'u ena kanaka maoli. Rise kanaka maoli to the top or be forced into accepting self-subjugation. What is Kanai Olavalu about? It is a process created by Hawaii State Law Act 195. It establishes a roll commission to enroll Native Hawaiians to participate in an election. The elected delegates shall convene a Hawaiian convention to develop the constitution for the Native Hawaiian governing entity. This process is promoted as nation building. What is the outcome of this process? According to Act 195, the Native Hawaiian governing entity shall be controlled by the state of Hawaii and U.S. federal laws. Aren't the Hawaiian people already living under these oppressive conditions today? Act 195 states that the Hawaiian people shall reaffirm the act of law that created the state of Hawaii. Why is Act 195 asking the Hawaiian people to reaffirm statehood? Does this reaffirmation have to do with the Hawaiian people who opposed statehood in 1959, or is the state of Hawaii still illegal? Remember U.S. Public Law 103-150, paragraph 29, that states to wit, whereas the indigenous Native Hawaiian people never directly relinquished their inherent sovereignty or their national lands to the United States, either through their monarchy or a plebiscite or referendum. The Kanaka Maoli people never gave up their national lands or sovereignty to the U.S. government or consented to the overthrow, annexation, and statehood of Hawaii. The problem with Act 195 is that this process the state is offering has a hidden agenda. Once the Hawaiian people participate in a state or U.S. federal legislative process, the outcome is that the U.S. government will take control over the Hawaiian governing entity and the national lands that the Kanaka Maoli people have never relinquished. History shows that the Native American Indians and the Native Alaskans participated in a similar state and U.S. federally controlled process in exchange for self-determination and federal recognition. The result was the Native Indians and Native Alaskans received federal recognition and gave up their Aboriginal land titles to the U.S. government. There is sufficient evidence to support this claim through the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act and the Indian Reorganization Act. Act 195 mandates that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs finance the entire process. Despite repeated demands from the lawful Hawaiian government, officials, and the explanation of the problems of this state-controlled process, the majority of OHA trustees continue to support this heinous process by approving millions of dollars to promote this flawed process. LHG opposes the state-controlled process and has demanded that OHA abandon the Kanai Oluwalu process and instead finance a process for self-governance free from state and federal control. OHA trustees can make this change, and by your signature to a petition will demand that OHA do the right thing.
Madam Chair, I would like to say something at this point. Thank you. To the last speaker, let me say this. I sit on two national Indian boards that represent 50, 60 tribes. And to paint all of the tribes into one corner, saying that they're not successful, they lost their land, is simply not true. The Seminoles in Florida own all of the Hard Rock cafes, both in the United States and in Europe, and they're doing very well. And it is not gambling that their first enterprise that made them a lot of money, it was cattle. And they're still second in the nation in exporting cattle. The tribe in Oregon, they manufacture all kinds of things for the U.S. and for other contractors. They also have big contracts with Japan, where they export all of their wood. Not all Indians are poor and unhappy with the U.S. So to make those kinds of statements is really, in my view, careless. And many Indian tribes have their problems, but mostly their problems are with their own people who fight among themselves. So I just wanted to make that clear, that the last couple of statements is simply not true. You cannot paint everybody into one box. And many Indians are very happy that the situation they're in. The Pequots in Connecticut is probably one of the richest small nations in America. So, you know, it really depends on what the people do to help themselves and to economically develop and grow. So you cannot just say, you know, America has ruined everything. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Aloha, trustees. I am here representing the Association of Hawaiian Civic Club, a membership organization of 68 clubs. Our civic clubs are autonomous, with the exception to comply with the rules of the council as well as the association. The voice of the association is the majority voice as we debate issues. The first Hawaiian Civic Club, the Hawaiian Civic Club of Honolulu, began in 1918, our founder being Prince Kuhio. Today I'd like to center my comments on two items. One is the extension of time to be made for the nation building process, and two, considering an alternate way to sign up to be included on the list of those who may participate in the nation building process. Since 1996, the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs has adopted over 25 resolutions that express support for advancing Hawaiian sovereignty and self-determination, including political options such as integration, free association, and independence, and resolutions that call for nation and dialogues and other initiatives to raise the level of understanding regarding the issue of Hawaiian sovereignty and self-determination. A Native Hawaiian convention, a constitutional convention, is long overdue, and after 20 years of discussion and education, we are ready to take the steps to actualize sovereignty and self-determination. The consensus of the board of directors, as we met in May, is that the original timeline that OHA proposed in March of this year is already behind schedule, considering that apportionment details have not yet been provided. It seems that an extension of time is appropriate. That extension, however, we feel should be no more than 6 months. Comment number 2, Act 195 is a reaffirmation that Native Hawaiians are a political community who has a special legal and political status with the state of Hawaii. The political community has grown to over 125,000 Native Hawaiians who are identified on Kanai'olavalu. The association supports Act 195 and the Native Hawaiian Road Commission publication of the initial and updated rolls, which shall serve as the basis for the eligibility of qualified Native Hawaiians whose names are listed on the rolls to participate and the organization of the Native Hawaiian governing entity. Now, in 2013, Act 077, which we supported at the legislature, stated that it included in the roll of qualified Native Hawaiians all individuals already registered with the state as verified Hawaiians or Hawaiians through the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, as demonstrated by the production of relevant Office of Hawaiian Affairs records, and extending to those individuals all rights and recognitions conferred upon other members of the rolls. Through Act 077, OHA Kawinoa registrations are included in Kanai'olavalu. The OHA Hawaiian Registry Program is an active registration which provides a verifiable process for Native Hawaiians who wish to be on the roll of qualified Native Hawaiians, extending to those individuals all rights and recognitions conferred upon other members of the roll. The association supports the Hawaiian Registry Program as the alternate way to sign up as Native Hawaiians identified through HRP. And again, those who sign up will be recognized already by Act 077. Mahalo for the opportunities to comment.
Shirley Dean, followed by Brandon Mala'awa'akua. Maka'awa. Sorry about that, Brandon.
Aloha. Aloha. My name is Sterling Yang. I'm with the Kingdom of Hawaii. I was raised in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and we never thought to be one Hawaiian. We always knew we was, but I came back from Vietnam in 1969 and went on the GI Bill up the university to get a degree. 1975, when I was, I needed one course to get my degree in a BBA, and I took a course in Hawaiian ethnic studies. I wanted to know my history as a Hawaiian, and I was amazed things I learned, and that rose my understanding of what really happened in Hawaii. And graduated in 75, but I was raised in a family, had 6 kids, and I was so busy trying to support them that by the time 1994 came along, Dennis approached me about this Kingdom of Hawaii stuff, and I said, it's good time to learn and just open my eyes to what the real history of our people are. And that's when I really got involved. Main thing I want to present to you guys is the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. There's no such thing as a nation within a nation. It's in their Constitution. Article 4, Section 3, there's no such thing as state within a state. So the point is, to get state or federal recognition is moot. We don't need their permission. We are in a perfect right. You understand? Perfect right and perfect obligation. We are in a perfect right to exercise the coming back of our nation with the Kingdom of Hawaii. And the United States has to exercise that perfect obligation to us. We don't need their permission. We don't need to beg and seek for recognition. We are already existing as a kingdom. We have the de jure status. The state and the federal government want that de jure status because the state is in a de facto status. meaning they exist, but they're not lawful. We exist and we are lawful. We must educate our people to that effect of what our standing is as a people and as a nation. We don't need to go begging to anybody for recognition. That's the thing that I know OHA is in a tough, difficult position being a state agency. And I applaud you guys for trying to help us get the real process going. The process is already in existence. It's lawful, we are backed up by the law of nations, and we are recognized in the international law as lawful. We are equal in authority and power to the United States. Our people think, here's the United States and here's little Hawaii. No, we are equal. We don't need to go begging to them. We said we're coming and we are here. We have the standing, we have the perfect right to do that, and they have to exercise the perfect obligation to us. Thank you.
Followed by Bumpy Ryan.
Aloha. I just come here to basically reiterate a lot of the things that were said. And we support, and I am in support of OHA's efforts of Kanai Oluvalo. Based on simple reasons, like how Auntie said, Public Law 103-150, Native Hawaiian people never relinquished our inherent sovereignty. This is our opportunity to finally be recognized as what we are. We are a nation. The sovereignty movement never just started when this thing started. This was started years and years ago. It never ended. It's a climb to the top of the mountain. The mountain not gonna get to us if we don't take these steps. You don't stay at the bottom of the mountain and wait till the top come to you. You gotta climb. Somebody gotta climb. And I applaud you guys' efforts for starting us on our way. And now it's time for us to take the step and take the ball from you guys, because this is our process. This is a process for the people. And I believe that we all here have differences, but what we all have in common is that we love each other. We love Hawaiians, and we want to do the best for what's out there for us. Right now, we cannot exist in this state. In 10 to 15 years, the average median family house can be $1 million. I don't know any millionaires personally, but I know we cannot afford to stay in this state. It's not for us. We're not going to be here long if we stay right where we at. More time is good to let our people in, but we also got a kako, like how Auntie said, this is a kako thing. We got to get involved. We got to start doing these things. And to us, this is a process. When we came into this room together, we all came in together. When we came in, I never walked in with my uncle. I sat down on one side, saved him one seat. Everybody came in. Everybody sit next to their friends. That's how it's supposed to be. We got to come under our own house and govern ourselves. When we have differences, it's in our house. Shouldn't be out there and made public to be made us, look ridiculous and ridiculed. Like how Auntie said, sometimes they look at us like that, like we idiots or whatever. But you look in Congress and you see how they debate with each other. They look like worse idiots, and they're playing with people's lives. We gotta be in the house so we can protect ourselves, protect what we hold dear to ourselves, and our people comes first. And I heard a lot of talk about international law and international arenas and stuff, and we support that. We live in a village, Kopuno, Waimanalo, and we've been practicing inherent sovereignty for 20 years. Our goal is independence. That's our mountaintop. People can, say that, they want to protect their rights and this and that, but our goal is always for independence. We're never going to rest for anything short of that. But this is not the time to debate whether we're going independent or we want federal recognition. It's about learning what is right, what we own, what kind of rights we have. get into our building and debate ourselves, debate with each other, because we're here for love. We're here for our families. We're here to defend everything. We're here to defend everything we own and everything we might lose. In 10 to 15 years might be a different looking state, might be a different looking place. So we're in the building today to make these decisions. And the reason why I brought up international law is arrangements being made to bring in Francis Anthony Boyle next month to have talks. And he's also putting out a book called Free Hawaii. And it's basically to educate us on he's a real international lawyer. He wants to educate us in what we have as a people and what we never relinquished. And independence is what's right for us. But that's my opinion. We got to get in the house and debate each other. So I support this, and I am one of these 125,000 people. And we might not all agree, but we are Hawaiians here, and we're all here for us. And thank you and mahalo.
Pretty mean act for follow, man. You know, it's one of our young generations. That's one frontline scholar. Not one educated scholar in college. Some frontline scholar you're looking at. You know, the kind that no get compensated by the state where they teach. Just get all this really straight, especially the scholars I love. Disappointing that we cannot sit down and talk. Complain about the state, but it's you they compensate. What's up with that, scholar? Still take the dollar? So let's get things straight. When you guys call me, you complain about the state, OHA, everything. Remember, if you get in one check from them, be a little bit more humble. Because Uncle gonna come out and lay it down. Truth is, it's a crime. We forced into this process, but we're in a crime. It's been a crime, it's forever been a crime. And I trying like hell to stay within the crime to get to the top of where the hell everything gonna start again. That's why I'm involved in this whole process, to try to see if I can make one difference with the state and the federal minds, mentality. Hawaiians, they need more time for learn. But most of our people no more time. I'm going to support this process as the last time I came to this meeting. I'm happy what brother did. Right on. Keanusai is not a legal law professor, especially in international law. I wish you can get one real international lawyer to do that. Not one political science scholar. No, you guys need to hear this because we need to be truthful. Well, a lot of Kamehameha came over here and said truth. That's what I'm talking now. If we don't can handle here now, out there going to be more worse because I going on a push too. So we really got to take into consideration that it's a personal choice. It's not a club, a nation, or that kind of choice. Just because I represent the head of the nation, or I'm the head of the nation state of Hawaii, it doesn't mean that the nation is all full in. Yes, what I bring to the table is the nation, but I, Bumpy Kanele, doing this on my own. He doing that on his own, or future generations. So I just bringing them out because, yeah, this might not be something that you like here, but how are we going to defend ourselves out there? What, the law of the splinter battle got to go into effect? I don't think so. Like Brian said, like everybody said, we want Lahui. I try another kind. I miss talking to Planet of Independence guys. And if I did contact you, I contact you because I wanted to get together with you before we go on any further. Because in our work towards figuring out how we're going to govern ourselves, we don't need a country, a model to do this, you guys. All we have to do is figure out a way to govern ourselves. Let's take our time as to what we want after that. Because quite frankly, Keanu Sai got his message in 1998. Guess what? The State Department said, no. You guys forget that. I talked to scholars at the school, the law school. They all knew this. 16 years. Yeah, 16 years. Well, I get a couple family members lost their property, lost money, thousands of dollars. I'm not going to sit back and watch that happen anymore. This is fine, what brother doing. Laulima, but sound like this for money. I'm going to call a spade a spade. Yeah, I'm going to call a spade, but my turn. Yeah, my turn.
But don't accuse me.
No. I just saying that's for money, bro. You said that yourself. Okay?
It's not for money. But don't accuse me for something you don't.
I'm just telling you the truth, bro. I have a international lawyer that has confirmed he's coming in. Francis Boyle will be here, and it's not from OHA. Nobody here. And I want to work with OHA to see if we can work on doing a partnership with doing this with him. Because you need that. You don't need scholars for this. You need legal experts that has been out in the field. Palestine, Russia, Georgia. That's the kind. You need that. So, I'm sorry.
Brother, you out of order. Let him finish. Stay behind the camera. Stay behind the camera. Stay behind the camera. You out of order.
Yeah, I'm sorry for taking up more of the time than I should. I wish I had more time just with you folks so I can share my true manao about some stuff. You know, I fought this for the process and everything. I want that go on record. I gotta leave. I would love to stay to hear plenty of people talking here, but I cannot. Thank you again.
Maybe after Walter.
After Walter?
Yeah, after Walter.
Mahalo. Aloha, trustees.
Aloha.
I don't know how many times I've come before you guys, but mahalo for creating all of this, whatever you've created. Been kind of exciting. I think now it's time for you to pass the...
You asked for this meeting.
What do you mean? Oh, well, thank you.
Because on me from day one.
I agree.
They wanted to address the issue.
Right.
And we stay down the same track, and we still get the same demands as on day one, and it's coming to fruition. But I really think it's time for the board to pass the baton now. You guys have done whatever you've done, so that's great. I really agree with what you said earlier, that we need to form some kind of a leadership group. And I don't think OHA can finish this, even though they've started it, tried their best, but being a state agency, we can only do so much. So your mandate is to protect the entitlements. We're all for that. I mean, we need to protect our entitlements. This poor is going to lose everything everybody's worked for all of these years. So we need to separate the protection of the entitlements from the building of our nation. I think that's complicating this whole thing. So finally it's out on the table, and that's your guys' mandate. That's what you've been doing all of these years. You spend a lot of money trying to do that, and God bless you guys for doing that. So now we're building our nation. We set aside monies for that. Let that be something separate so we don't get all entangled with this entitlements thing. We need to protect that. But to have the feds come over here and mess up our nation building just to protect the entitlements is going to cause too much of a problem, I think. So if you guys are going to go into executive session just to figure out if we're going to have more ways to participate in Kanai Oluwalu, then for sure this thing is not going to work, because if we're trying to build our nation, we cannot wait for lawyers in the state to tell us how to build our nation. That's not going to work. So separate this whole thing, figure out a way to protect the entitlements, and figure out a third party that's going to come in here with all of us being involved to build our nation. Thank you.
And we'll take a break and reconvene at whatever was your leave along.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Ili Malong, and I'm with Mana, Not the Magazine, grassroots handful of us that are all stretched, working full-time, trying to parent young children and do our best for the Lahui as well. I want to start by addressing comments that I've heard throughout these past few months about the racists that are trying to dismantle our Hawaiian Trust. When I hear the trustees speak of these racists as if they are somehow separate from the country they come from, and my mind is baffled. The only thing indigenous to the U.S. is racism. So when you talk about federal recognition to save our assets, as a method to save our assets, I say that we don't go to the racist father to protect us from his racist sons. It is the racism of the U.S. that we are seeking liberation from, and the majority of people in this room and the rising consciousness of our Lahui understands that independence is the only thing that will give us a saving chance to protect our lands and to protect our people and to protect the earth. It's not even just about Hawaii at this point. It's about the whole entire planet that is going down in flames because of the racist actions of the First World. So I'd like to spend the remainder of my time talking a little bit about concrete reasons why we seek independence. And I want to invite those who are holding the signs to consider and support the following statements as one of the 400,000 plus of us Lahui Kanaka. This is a kako issue. We know our history, first of all. We know that we are an independent country under U.S. occupation. We want to do justice to that history. We want to honor our kupuna and our elite, because that is who we are as a Hawaiian people. That is who makes up our identity. That's where our identity comes from. We know that our lands were seized at the time of the overthrow. This is not news to anybody here. These are our crown and government lands. But we want all of our lands back. And we want full and perpetual control of our crown and government lands. We are not okay with having them be settled, having them be digged out and put into negotiation with the state of Hawaii, which is the only reason I can understand why this new state recognition thing is even on the table. To be able to go into negotiations with a governing entity over our assets, over our national lands. We're not okay with that. We know that there are certain things happening on these national lands of ours that the U.S. will never relinquish control of through federal recognition. And one of them is happening on Pohakuloa. Pohakuloa, as well as the rest of our militarized lands, are being bombarded. They're being bombed. They're being dug out for special cities. And worst of all to me, is that Pohakuloa is being used to train other armies around the world, such as the Indonesian army, to slaughter the West Papuans, our Pacific cousins. That's what I'm saying. This is not a world issue. We as Hawaiians have kuleana in the Pacific. We need to stand up to that kuleana. We are so far beyond the protection of what little we have from these racists. We have bigger issues. We have our lands being used to make war. We have corporations that are exploiting our lands, and some of them are our national lands, for profit, poisoning our lands, poisoning our neighborhoods. We're talking about agribusiness, corporate agribusiness. And what we have coming down the pipeline is something called the TPPA, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which is creating international courts. We want to talk about international law and international courts. It's creating international courts so that these multinational corporations can sue governments when they feel that their rights are being infringed upon, meaning their profits. These are the kinds of things we need to be thinking about. This is the level we need to be looking at when it comes to the protection of our country. And when it comes to stepping up to our kuleana to not allow our country to be exploited, and especially for the violence of other people around the world. Lastly, I only have 30 seconds left. I do not support this process that comes out of Act 195 until it's not just about educating about independence, it's also about putting the money and the work behind independence routes that have been put behind federal recognition. And until that happens, any way that you engage independence folks, as far as I'm concerned, is just an attempt to manufacture consent. So it's just an attempt to make it look like there's been a fair and democratic process, when in fact there hasn't. It's been very unfair. And until that happens, I won't participate in any new role, in any new registration. I will participate and register when I see that things are happening in a Pono fair and balanced way.
Keep wine lands in wine hands, yeah. Keep wine lands in wine hands, yeah. On the road we go, far from life we stroll. It's an uphill climb, yeah. Stays with you all the time. Keep the wine lands in the wine hands, yeah. Keep the wine lands in the wine hands, yeah. Keep the wine lands in the wine hands, yeah. Keep the wine lands in the wine hands, yeah. Hawaiian say, oh mama, yeah, ukaina ikapono. Oh mama, yeah, ukaina ikapono.